Jest 14, ale zaczniemy za
Ladies and gentlemen, it's 2 p.m., but we'll start in a few minutes. The previous panel ran a little late. We need a few more minutes. Technical information. Our panel is going to be conducted in Polish, English, and Czech. If any of you speaks all these languages, that's good for you. If not, help yourself to the headsets that are standing at the side of the
Szanowni Państwo, będziemy zaczynać.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin at a slow pace, but also immediately because a little late. At 5 p.m. we want to end. I'm Maciej 𝐤𝐳𝐲𝐬𝐤𝐿. I'll have the pleasure of conducting today's event for you and the entire conference, which is going to be interesting and international. Before we move on to the subject matter, just a little housekeeping. First of all, we are very happy that you're here with us and you're going to listen to what's going to be said and going to watch what's going to happen on stage. Also, we have quite a lot of people online. The conference is recorded, it's streamed on YouTube in 2 languages, Polish and English. And since we're talking about languages, I'd like you to be aware that today's conference and the later panel is going to be conducted in 3 languages, Polish, English, and Czech. So if any of you is not able to move freely in these 3 languages, please take the headsets and listen to the interpretation into your language. Channel 1 is Polish, Channel 2 is English, Channel 3 is Czech. Moving on to the subject matter. On behalf of the organizers of today's conference, PKP, Polskie Linie Kolejowe S.A, I'm very happy to welcome you to today's conference, the role of rail transport and infrastructure managers in the face of the challenges of the modern world. We're very happy that this conference fits into the European nature of the entire TRACO fair. Continuing the discussion which started earlier today during the international debate on freight transport organized by ProColej Foundation, supported by Polskie Linie Kolejowe S.A. as a partner. I'd like to especially welcome 𝐤𝐳𝐲𝐬𝐿, Minister of Infrastructure. We have with us also Ms. Elżbieta Łukaniuk, member of the cabinet of the Minister of Transport. We have Mr. Alberto Mazzona, CEO of the Community of European Railway Infrastructure, and we welcome all the other guests representing the European railway enterprises. During the 2 discussion panels, we're going to discuss the historical opportunities standing before the rail infrastructure managers, but also we'll talk about challenges. Opportunities usually are accompanied by difficulties. We all here in this room want rail to become the foundation of a resilient and reliable transport system in Europe. During the various panels, we're going to learn about what has been achieved and what the managers are going to focus on in the coming years. Let's start with the presentations that will open this conference. I'd like to welcome Mr. 𝐤𝐳𝐲𝐬𝐿, Minister of Infrastructure, to deliver the opening speech. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to have this opportunity to participate together with yourselves in this 2nd day of the International TRACO Fair. This is one of the most important events of the rail industry in Europe. We all know that, but it's important to actually explicitly state it again, in case anybody has doubts or is unaware. International Conference of PKP, Polskie Linie Kolejowe S.A. during this event is a good, I'll say even an excellent opportunity to carry out talks and to exchange experiences with the representatives of the European infrastructure managers and the decision makers about opportunities and challenges that are facing the railway industry. I'd like to thank President Ireneusz Merkel of Polskie Linie Kolejowe and the entire team that Mr. President is heading. Thank you for organizing this conference. The presence, the attendance during this part of the events is a testimony to how much this conference is needed. And today, we're able to present, I'll say, an opportunity to also be proud of the achievements of Polish railway lines, Polskie Linie Kolejowe, and the development of the railway infrastructure, and in the struggle against transportation exclusion in our country. These achievements of our railway men and women is something I've talked about with the Minister of Transport responsible for railways in the United Kingdom. We talked particularly about railway investment projects, and Mr. Minister emphasized the needs in the UK for modern infrastructure, and I was able to proudly share the information and knowledge with my colleague about the progress of such investment projects in Poland. Let me assure you that whoever I talk to, they are all very impressive. I talked about it in detail today with Director Robert Mazzola. Thank you for this interesting conversation, for this discussion, and for the declaration that we are going to continue this discussion and that it will become an element of the debate in all the fora that you're going to participate in. Ladies and gentlemen, Poland is in the heart of Europe. Some people say, and they're probably right, by saying that Poland is the heart of Europe. And it's not megalomania saying this. This is a fact. So far, we maybe did not have the courage often enough to make this explicit statement, but we're saying it proudly today because we definitely are the largest construction site in Europe when we talk about rail line infrastructure investment projects. And this is a statement that no one can argue with. Our location at the crossing of the main transportation routes has always been, for Poland, both a negative and a positive, worry and an opportunity. For many years, nobody wanted to utilize the opportunity. No one wanted to take it. It's a good thing that in recent years it has changed, and it's still changing. We can say that Poland is naturally predisposed to play a key role in the European transportation system, especially in Central Europe. This goal, for which I happen to be the minister, I have the honor to be the minister, is being implemented by this government. And to confirm the effectiveness of this implementation is the fact that the 3Cs corridor, a transportation corridor, has been added to the TNT network. It's the work that we've been carrying out since the beginning of 2016, or even since the end of 2015. Today in Europe, nobody asks, what is Via Carpathia? Today, we only think about when it's going to become functional. Also today, nobody asks anymore what's Rail Carpathia in this transportation corridor. In the same way that there is no doubt that Rail Baltica as a transportation railway link has to be formed despite the problems with that investment that the Baltic states are facing. I am convinced that these problems and these difficulties are going to be overcome. So to utilize this location, this advantage, in the implementation of the vertical corridors is not only the Polish raison d'être, but it's also a security, an element that gives a sense of security to the entire Europe, to the entire European Union. Today, the Polish government is carrying out multi-year programs related to railway investment projects. We are fighting against transportation exclusion. It's a phrase that is repeated quite often, but maybe it is a good time for me to explain what it is all about. It's a phenomenon where the inhabitants of a given district or a given municipality, so the micro area, do not have access to collective transportation, to mass transit. In order to change this, we are aiming to supplement the local infrastructure so that as many people in Poland as possible can use rail transport. In August this year, the government adopted the new rail program. It's a list of investment projects that are planned for carrying out until 2030. As I said yesterday, this activity will allow us to make a seamless transition between the various financial perspectives of the EU, 2014-2020, and then 2021-2027. The large investment projects will be continued without obstacles. And I will be repeating that always, and I'll repeat it once again. In 2015, the amount of money for investment projects under the overall rail program increased from 67 billion zlotys to 79 billion zlotys. Just to simplify to all those who use the interpretation, it's approximately 1,800,000,000 euro more. The new program, this time for 170 billion zlotys, that's obviously these are considerably larger amounts of funding. Especially now, in the context of combating transportation exclusion, we're talking about investment projects where the government works hand in hand with the local authorities under the local program for the supplementation of the local railway infrastructure called Railway Plus. The projects cover 1,200 kilometers of railway line, the building of which will reduce the transportation exclusion of the Polish regions. We have to mention that it is very important not only for the future users, for the future passengers using rail transport, but it's very important for the railway industry, also for the manufacturers who are so that are represented in such numbers. Recently, we changed the budget from 6.6 billion to 13 billion zlotys, 200 million. This is more than doubling of that amount, and this is important, especially for the program. But it's also important for all the beneficiaries of the program. Until now, PKP Polskie Linie Kolejowe, the Polish Railways, signed 33 agreements with local authorities about joint implementation of investment worth 12.6 billion zlotys. At the moment, we are announcing invitation to tender and signing contracts with the contractors for the delivery of those investment projects. We've also noticed a problem which touches many small towns in Poland. There are railway lines going through hundreds of them, but their inhabitants can't use them because there is no train stop. All they get is the noise from the passing trains. That's why we created a separate program.
It's a multi-railway stops program, and under that we have over 200 projects, which will get Polish citizens closer to the railway. And out of 200 projects, 70 has been delivered. These are specific development projects, and all of it makes that I will now refer to what I said in the very beginning, that Poland now is center of Europe for investment, line investments, and also facility projects, but mainly rail projects, and also in road transport. But to the sector, it's really important because we really live in one world, and the projects intertwine. Road projects and rail projects. We could talk a lot here about road projects, and we need to provide funding for next years, for the next future. The stability of the state investment policy provides for security to the companies who deliver the projects. It's equally important. And also, we need to say about legislation area, the amendments to the law so that the rail transport can develop better. We have amended law on the railway fund to be able to support railway connections and to bridge the gaps in transport for co-funding from the Fund of Modernization and Repairs of Wagons for passenger traffic based on contract on public services. Ladies and gentlemen, we know perfectly well that railway transport is one of the most important sectors in the Polish economy. And obviously, we do not forget about road transport. I do not really want to evoke this dissonance in thinking between those who operate on rail routes and those who use roads. Railway transport has direct impact on development. It is significant for people to be able to move and to move goods as well. Strengthening of the rail transport is a strategic task of the state, and it is a huge challenge to Poland. I am fully convinced that the debates planned by the organizers, the debates planned by PKP, PLK, and the discussions on crucial aspects will give fruit in specific solutions and will contribute to improvement of the Polish railway. Nobody has said that we have reached our objectives already. Dear organizers, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for inviting me here, and I wish fruitful debate and a good debate, because the debate will be there, I'm sure. But I hope it will be a creative debate and not debate just for the sake of the debate. Thank you. Minister, thank you very much for your comments. We have plenty of challenges, and we'll be talking about them. We'll be having a discussion on it. And now I'd like to invite here the host of today's meeting, the CEO of PLK S.A., 𝐤𝐵 Merchel. ministers, colleagues, managers of the infrastructure, people from international organizations, all the participants of today's meeting. The meeting, which is the beginning, and it's an opening for our debate on functioning of the Polish railways in Europe. Minister Adamczyk is a person who is very good in showing the vision of what we are doing. And I believe that it's a proof of the ministry's involvement in development of the Polish railways. And I really want to thank for that my deepest gratitude to Mr. Adamczyk and Mr. Bittel. We operate in the Polish railways, and we need to remember what we have delivered until now, but how much is still for us to do. The invitation which you've accepted, so your presence here on this debate, well, I'm really honored that you've chosen to be here. So many representatives from different European countries. We've met yesterday with most of you, and today the debate will be a continuation of our yesterday's discussions. We've decided to organize this conference during International Traco Fair, Traco, the biggest infrastructural conference in Poland and one of the biggest in Europe, which is dedicated to the railway sector. The recent time of crisis, of pandemics and war, the barbaric attack of Russia on Ukraine, well, all of it showed the role of infrastructure, critical infrastructure, and railway is such a critical infrastructure, it goes without saying. The railway played critical role to provide safety of transport in Europe in this difficult time. Please remember the times of pandemics when limited number of passengers could move and practically everything was frozen. But with the decision of the Minister of Infrastructure, the passenger train in Poland operated on all the lines, although the demand was drastically low, which means that Polish citizens were not cut off in the remote parts of our country. Apart from that, after the war broke in Ukraine, Polish railway really faced up to the challenge. And I'm talking about all the railway people, the carriers and the operators. Railway station in Przemyśl was the vivid example and symbol of it. And I want to remember now one of our units, which is the protection service, protection guard, which protects the railway infrastructure. They protect all that. But at that time, especially close to the border crossings, they were really involved in supporting Ukrainian people. We need to say that the initiatives taken by the EU institutions, by initiating by the European Commission the Solidarity Corridor, Solidarity Corridor, which had the dramatically positively impact on transport of goods and people who wanted to come to Poland and who wanted to travel farther west in Europe. As the CEO, I'm really proud of the fact that we met the challenge and we made efforts to support Ukraine. I remember It was several days it took only several days for us to prepare the line Krościenko-Zagorz, which was not operational. We had some problems with that, but train could go. And there've been on places like that. We spent 37 million euro to upgrade and refit the lines. And we know that in the closest perspectives, the funds which we want to raise to rebuild destroyed railway lines, which were not really used in the eastern direction, well, it's a very important task to us, to Poland, but also to the entire Europe, I believe. And the railway has now this historical opportunity to strengthen its role as a reliable mode of transport. We keep repeating that railway is the most environmentally friendly mode and the safest mode. If we look at statistic number of accidents, it's like that across Europe. Polish railway is really safe, and our ambition is to make it the safest one. Some 20 years ago, per 1 million moved passengers, we had 4 accidents, and 10 years ago, 3, and now it's 1.8 accidents. So we see that incidents and accidents are really heavily reduced. And the one we tend to know are those who are brought up by mass media, because they are really then visible. So it's not like that in Poland only. We see it across Europe. I believe that the measures we've taken and the measures taken across Europe, they will give us good integration of the railway transport system, strategy for sustainable and smart mobility, revision of regulation on TNT, and it was covered already by Minister Adamczyk, and delivery of Rail Baltica, where it was meant to be done by 2028, but now, knowing the deadlines from the Baltic states, we know it will be 2030. So we believe that jointly will deliver, and the train will leave Tallinn, will go to Riga, Kaunas, and Warsaw in really short time. I believe it will take only a couple of years. It will go really quickly. I see here Ruca, the CEO of the Lithuanian Railways, and we had our discussion yesterday. We met on a bilateral meeting in Poland, and I believe that it shows that we are going in the right direction together. And our meetings with CEO Swoboda from Czech Republic, it shows that the high-speed railway is our joint interest and our joint idea. We exchange opinion, we exchange experience. There are different attitudes in different countries to the traffic general or to other aspects of infrastructure management, but our overall objective is one: safety and providing infrastructural offer which could move maximum number of passengers and goods. Everybody's doing that. Everybody's going this direction. I learned a lot from our discussions, and I always keep saying that. Who is learning, who meets, who uses others' experience will profit a lot from that. Delivery of the objectives is really important, especially the legislative initiative, legislation solution. So, as the third biggest manager, we have 19,000 kilometers of the rails. So it's really important Only a couple of years ago, it was 18,300. Now we have almost 19,000. For 7 years now, we were building up the railway, not destroying it. Over 900 kilometers in the passenger traffic were restored to operation.
What is interesting is the same 900 kilometers were liquidated in the previous 10 years. But I hope that our current trend is the same as throughout the rest of Europe, and we say we're going in this direction. We're not deteriorating the offering, we're improving it significantly. We intend to harmonize the TNT network to the required technical parameters. We're probably going to face a joint challenge in 2030. We know very well that this is very difficult to achieve what we're planning for that year. There are a lot of challenges before us. But I do hope that thanks to joint efforts, thanks to the unity of all infrastructure managers throughout Europe, each European railway network will receive the right financing. I'll emphasize, this is the most environmentally friendly and the safest means of transport. Ladies and gentlemen, the railway market is facing the times of great challenges, and today's conference provides a great opportunity to discuss the most important hot issues and to develop conclusions, because everybody in the international arena, we have the same goal that we share, that I discussed earlier. For me, the most important goal as the president of the Polish railway lines is to create a consistent, accessible, and effective railway system. Thank you very much. Mr. President, thank you very much for this presentation, for showing us the priorities and goals and directions for development, not only for the Polish railways, but also for the European railways. We'll be discussing that shortly, but before we do, I'd like to note that there is one more guest who joined us that I haven't had the opportunity to welcome earlier. We have with us Mr. 𝐻𝐳𝐻𝐵, State Secretary at the Ministry of Infrastructure, Government Plenipotentiary for Combating Transport Exclusion. Mr. Minister, please join me on stage. Yes? I don't want you to make a speech. Not this time. You will not have to listen, but we will see something, because I think today is the special occasion, Mr. Minister. It's 7 years ago. Do you remember what happened 7 years ago? It's been 7 years now. 7 years ago, Mr. Minister became Minister Secretary of State. All the best. And please accept this modest gift. I'm a little distracted. Please forgive me. I have to say I feel a little bit like 7 years ago. At 10 a.m., Minister Andrzej Adamczyk handed me the nomination for Undersecretary of State in the Ministry of Construction. This is a very pleasant moment. Then I went to my office. I met my colleagues who were directors of the railway departments, and I said, what's on the agenda for the next 2 weeks? And I found out the next day there's a plenary session of the Parliament about the amendments to the railway law, the biggest amendment since 15 years. And I say, so who's going to present? And they say, Mr. Minister, that's you, sir. So I had 2 bottles of mineral water quickly, and next day I went to the Parliament to present this greatest amendment in the railway law. And sometime later, Minister Andrzej Adamczyk said, well, I've seen you, well, yeah. It's a good thing to start at the deep end, as they say. Thank you very much for this pleasant surprise. I was completely unaware of that. I'll find out why my intelligence services failed to find out about it, and I will draw conclusions. Thank you very much. I was supposed not to talk too long, so thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Oh, yeah, one more word? Yes, I have to say one more thing, but you know I try to not to eat cake, right? Just as a supplement, I'd like to thank you for the cooperation, for continued cooperation every year. I am convinced, well, again and again, that it was one of the best decisions by myself and the Prime Minister. And I'm very happy that we were able to work together on the same plan. And the tightness of information flow in the Ministry of Infrastructure, as well as the tightness of information in the Polish railways, is good. If Minister Andrzej Bittel failed to find out about it, then congratulations on the lack of any leakage in the ministry and in the Polish railway. And since Minister Andrzej Bittel cannot take cake for a variety of reasons, quite obviously that was the basis for this idea, because we know that Minister Andrzej Bittel has some weaknesses, especially for cake, especially great cake. Thank you very much, ministers. Basically, this is the end of the official part, and we're going to move to the subject matter. There are going to be 2 discussion panels. We'll try to cut them a little short compared to how they were originally planned. We'll be talking about opportunities, but we'll be also talking about challenges facing IMs in the context of creating the railway of the future, but also the possibilities that result from the need to redefine the entire transport chains, including the overall vision of the Trans-European TNT network. Now, we're going to have panel number 1, opportunities and challenges for infrastructure managers, and I'll have the pleasure of inviting to the stage the panelists who will participate in this event. As the first, I'd like to invite Andrzej Bittel, Undersecretary Plenipotentiary of the Government for Combating Transport Exclusion. Next participant is Ireneusz Merchel, President of the Board of PKP PLK S.A. Next panelist is 𝐤𝐳𝐲𝐬𝐤𝐿 Swoboda, President of the Board Sprawa Żeleznic, Czech Republic. Next guest, Alain Quinet, Deputy General Director of SNCF from France. And Ruta Jakubauskienė, President of LTG Infra of Lithuania. And last but not least, Alberto Mazzola, Executive Director from the Community of European Railway and Infrastructure Companies, CER. I'd like to remind you all about the headsets for translation. We'll be sharing the microphones if we run out of them, but I hope we have enough. During the presentation of President Merkel, railways, and you all know about that, is facing a historic chance of playing a key role in the construction of an interoperating transport system in Europe. And it's also key to decarbonization. We all know that this goal is somewhere before us, so I want to talk with my guests about this. The first question, allow me, I'll address to today's cake recipient. Mr. Minister, what are the most important achievements of railway? Now, what were you successful in, and what are the opportunities and challenges you see in the perspective until 2040? It's true we do not have a whole day for discussing this, although there will be a lot to say. But I think we predominantly look at things through figures. But since the figures were already mentioned in the preliminary introduction speeches, then perhaps it will be better to focus not so much on the figures, but what are the results of those figures and what emotions do they raise. The huge amounts of money invested in Polish railways are, of course, investment in contractors, manufacturers, all of those who can use those monies to conduct their business and also improve the overall economic stance of Poland. Now, looking at how we're organizing the investment project processes starting with 2016, we will see what are the prospects for the coming years. So looking from the point of view, that's from the point of view of the industry. Looking from the point of view of the citizens, the community, we are gaining an improved means of transport delivered by professional entities that professionally deal with infrastructure, rail infrastructure, by wagon operators and carriers, who are also, by the way, changing their rolling stock to high quality, modern, environmentally friendly in many ways. And these two processes are further reinforced by a number of policies which are holistic in nature, which encourage going away from fossil fuels towards low emission and zero emission technologies. And this is the context which further supports the development of railways in Poland and should really constitute the basis for our thinking about future activities. We can answer a number of questions here, or issues, but accessibility is always something that comes back to us. I will always be repeating it, not in the context of TSI PRM, which is also obviously a very important type of accessibility, which permeates through every investment project that is undertaking in the area of rail transport in every sphere, in infrastructure, in railway stations, in rolling stock. But the accessibility which we look at from the point of view of the two new programs that are also mentioned today, the Train Stop program and the Railway Plus, Kolej Plus program. In the second case, it's just reinvigorating unused lines or improving the parameters of existing ones. In the second case, we are adding places where you can get on the train and get off the train. These are two programs where the amounts of money are not huge, but I'm very happy about them because they show how the attitudes towards rail transport are changing and have changed. It's not just travel from A to B between two major cities with high speed, which is very important. I'm not negating that, but this is infrastructure that is actually going to be used to provide blood flow into the tiny veins that connect to the arteries, which will be the high-speed railway links which we will be connecting in European connection in order to interoperatively travel throughout Europe together with other infrastructure managements, CR and others, under the procedures, regulations, and standards that should be unified, that hopefully will be the same. So I'll briefly add one more brief question. Less technical, less figure-wise, more about emotions. You're also attaining potentially to combat exclusion. And together with the Polish railway lines, Polskie Linie Kolejowe, you are achieving a situation that trains go back to where they were absent for decades. And there are situations where a train takes off for the first time in 10, 20, even sometimes 30 years. The inhabitants come in to see and look, to take a ride. It's a moment. I know it's different situations in the life of a politician. Sometimes you can get emotional, but probably this moment is emotional. Absolutely. This is a moment in time when you can actually touch a concrete product of a process. In case of large investment projects, sometimes it's impossible. You start something, you begin something other. In case of smaller project, which are carried out over a shorter period of time. This is possible. Together with Mr. President here, we were present at the opening of a revitalized line Ostrołęka-Chorzele. And first, there was a big press conference in Ostrołęka with the participation of the local authorities, local politicians. Then we took the train, and not all passengers could board because their trains in Mazowsze, their diesel trains are shortish. In Chorzele, an even bigger meeting with inhabitants concluded, we can say, with a folk festivity. There were thousands of people, and indeed we could see the joy, we could see the emotions, because somebody somewhere at some point in time decided that they will close down that railway link, that there will be no transport in that location. And then we managed to reverse those bad decisions, actually taken by similar person. That was actually kind of funny that those were the happiest who originally had an influence on the actual closing of those lines back then. But good. One convert makes more happiness in heaven than 100 faithful. So that simply says that we could hypothesize that we've broken a certain lack of rail transport, which would reach almost everywhere. Obviously, rail will not get totally everywhere. They will reach where it used to reach, where there used to be need for it. That need was eliminated, now it's coming back. I'm convinced that it's not it's not only these sort of activities that we're doing in rail, we'll also be doing this in road transport. As the plenipotentiary of the government, long name of the position, but we also have to look at this from the point of view of an overall transport network. We need to coordinate those various branches of transport in order to increase mobility in collective transport. Not just rail, not just road, but collective road and rail. And limit individual mobility, not exclude it, but limit it, not ban it, but encourage people to use collective transport for a variety of reasons: economic, ecological, environmental. This is part of providing for freedom, which is a basic. So we don't all have to go by SUVs, but if we can go by bus or by train.
Yes, obviously they may have such vehicles, but maybe they should use bicycles to get to the railway station instead. The next question. Well, well, it's about achievements from the recent years and the biggest challenges ahead of you.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for your invitation at the heart of Europe. And this reflects the close links between SNCF Réseau and PLK, of course. I'm convinced we face the same challenges everywhere in Europe, from climate change to war and also various economic risks. You know, the French President, Emmanuel Macron, explained to the French opinion that we are entering war economy. And war economy, of course, means shortages, inflation, but war economies also mean investing in strategic assets. And I think that what we are rediscovering now is that railways is a strategic asset. Railways are the backbone of long distance and green mobility. Railways are dual use, commercial use, but also military use. I can see some uniforms in the room, so I can perfectly understand why, including solidarity lines with Ukraine. So I think it's important, given the importance of these challenges, to share achievements. And maybe I could share with you a few achievements in on the French network. Rapidly, the first achievement is really that investments are back. We have, like a lot of other countries, accumulated a huge backlog in renewal investments. And we are progressively resolving, eliminating this backlog. We know that renewal investments are boring. They provide no commercial revenues. They are much less attractive than development projects. But if we want to sustain green mobility, we absolutely need renewal investment. And we have now a plan to increase our renewal investment from 2.8 billion per year to 3.8 billion per year over the coming 3 years. Maybe the second achievement I could mention is the development of the railways in metropolitan areas. Of course, France is well known for high-speed lines, but now we focus on metropolitan areas. Just give you 2 short examples. If you come to Paris next year for the Olympic Games, you will benefit from a new area line, EOL, which is one of the newest one in the world. We are digging under Paris. It's a terrific work, very impressive, but it will be ready for the Olympic Games. And we are also trying to develop metropolitan services all over France in big metropolitan cities. So that's not necessarily very big works. You have to improve the signaling systems, to enlarge the platform and so on, but it can create a lot of traffic. And maybe the third achievement I could mention is that we are attracting new customers. You know, we have recently opened up the French network to competition, and we have the pleasure to have now Trenitalia on our lines between Paris, Lyon, Milan, and Renfe is coming soon between Lyon, Barcelona, Madrid, and so on. And of course, we are waiting for newcomers. That's a very good news because what we can see is that we are able to provide more train paths to these newcomers without redistributing train paths from our incumbent, from SNCF Voyageurs. So that's basically new traffic, new commercial revenues for us, and it helps us to finance the renewal investments. So we are I hope, in a positive loop now.
Okay, thank you very much. Teraz pytanie.
Thank you so much. Now, my question to Jiří Svoboda. Poland is looking at Czechia. We are looking how Czechia is managing the situation. What kind of challenges do you have? What have you managed to achieve, and where well, and I look at Poland. What can I tell you? Our success stories? Well, Czechia, in comparison to other countries, never went through this process of liquidating the lines. We have very dense railway network. So I believe one success story is that we managed to maintain availability of railway network in Czechia. In the recent 10 years, the rails have been developed really quickly, and the quality of safety has been increased, and quality is increased, the speed is going up, and also we managed VTCS. So all of it is our success story, really. We want to increase ETCS to other lines, to new lines. And in Czechia, from the railway infrastructure perspective, we managed to maintain the network, and also we transport military equipment with it, which is a success. In Poland, I've seen that you have hacker attacks on railway network, which so we try to invest in Czechia in security and safety. and cyber. We looking at cyber security. We have no experience with it whatsoever. We've never experienced any attack from hackers, so we don't really know. We have never been tested. So it's for us to maintain the development pace. It's important to us, and important to maintain our capacity, and even better, to increase the capacity. And also, we want to simplify the railway system, because it seems to me it's difficult. And also, I would want to ask our colleagues from Lithuania to tell us about it.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And as some of us being here know situation about Russia and Ukraine, but Lithuania touched a lot of. And why? Because 40% decreased our freight volume in freight companies, so cargo companies, but capacity decreased about 14% freight and length. And also the European Union sanction against for Belarus and Russia have fundamentally touched and changed the vertical logistics. So this logistical chains are decreased down, and our freight companies need to have and to find alternatives, different routes in Europe, in Scandinavia. And also we are touching our port of Klaipėda, and their freight decreased too. So further infrastructure, 50-20 versus 40-35 development is one of the most important things in Lithuania, and to according to TNT updates, and to prepare migration plan. And what about achievements? So higher volume to high-end container freight, establishing us to develop our Kaunas intermodal terminal as a hub of 40-35 and 50-20 gorgeous connection. And as Irenus, our partner, said, the main project in Lithuania and the Baltic states and Poland too is connection with Europe, and Rail Baltica is the biggest project in Lithuania from independent times. And I think we can't stopped, and we must to think further what will be with another network of Lithuania, and how we change 50-20 to 40-35.
Thank you very much.
Well, question to you about challenges. Actually, you have covered kind of it in your presentation. I believe that the international context is very important. The war economy, and check with that we have it in the war economy. How do you say it? It's really important. What we are doing. Our discussions show that it's really of significant importance. Well, we look at Czechia, because they have current 3 kV and they have different electrical solution, and now the system is getting integrated. They do it surely but slowly. And another problem, because the railway lines have been maintained, but I'm afraid that the profitability has decreased. Maybe not, I don't know. But we need to remember that what's really of highest value in this ambition, well, the investment projects in all our countries, our close neighbors, we're talking about Lithuania, Czechia, Ukraine, Germany, but also France, which is on a different level, of course, because last year, when I visited Lyon last year, I visited LCS well, it's not a local one. It's a huge area. It's over 2,000 square kilometers of lines controlled from one place. And in Czechia, in Prague, I saw a similar control center. And I believe that this is what we should really look at. This is the role model we want to follow. But what's most important, the European railway is divided into different electrical systems and different control systems, and quite often, as a result, the trains have to slow down at the border. I'm looking really in a subtle way because we need to do it differently. We need to integrate the systems, which is why the European RTMS, the European control system, has to be implemented as soon as possible for us to be able to say that we have not from one producer, of course not, because we in Poland we have several producers of the system, but they have to be compatible and integrated. But the question is whether there is something I want to highlight. Well, to begin with, the investment projects, they have impact on the development of the country. We need to remember that, well, during the previous debate we talked about the commercial speed, about the freight transport. But what's decisive when we have intermodal trains, the speed is at least twice as an average, and very often it is getting close to the commercial speed for passenger transport. So it means that we can really drive quickly on the infrastructure, but other aspects has to be adopted, the one connected with the time schedule. It's an important thing. It won't be unified in each country. Each country has its own conditions, but for sure we need better coordination on a variety of levels. And one more comment from me on our discussions in our countries where we have different organizational structures. I hope we'll be able to touch upon it a bit later also. But it should not have any impact on functioning of the railways. Thank you. Alberto Mazzola. Now the question to you. Your organization, or the organization where you're a director or CEO, well, you have not only managers of the infrastructures, but also carriers. So from this perspective, when you look at what was happening in the recent years, what do you think is waiting us in the next years?
Thank you for the questions. I think I was reflecting on the point when a young people today wants to travel in Europe, look at railways before. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was not the case. And when they want to travel, then they find some difficulties, especially the longer they want to go. And this is the challenge of the infrastructure managers. We need to have infrastructure that are able to provide the service that the market is demanding and the young people are demanding. I think if you look at this perspective, this is what also is happening. International passenger traffic increased a lot this summer, last summer too. So there is more demand than supply in this moment. And we are not able to provide the services that people would like to have. I think it's a big opportunity also. And I think I would like to comment briefly of what happened in Poland. I think 7,000 kilometers of line or new or renewed is important. I think 200 connection on local level improved is also very important because we need to be closer to citizens. And let me say what we discussed yesterday also, we have a dream in Tri-CER also, and we are promoting in the 10T in infrastructure. We would like to connect all the capitals of Europe via high speed. We think it's feasible, it will take time, but we have some examples here on the table. In France, we are quite advanced, let's say. We need only the international connection. In Czech Republic, you are investing, you're going on, in Poland also, and we would like to see that all this is connected. We think it's feasible. It will be a challenge because the lead time to deliver this project is long, but demand is there in this moment. So if I look from the railways point, they would like to have more infrastructure available. What is happening in the last years is that there are more congestion. So more trains are growing, especially on passenger, in freight a bit less, but there is more and more congestion, so we need more maintenance for the existing lines, and I would say we will need also more capacity on the rail infrastructure. So if I look at the future and we are able to provide this, should be bright. And I think European society is demanding more railways today. And in my opinion, also decision makers. When you go to elections, when you go to speak to people, this demand is quite high. We were reflecting 2 years ago, we were here with the Connecting Europe Express. It was an amazing experience, very risky, let me say, but we connected all the member states of Europe, and it was a big success. In any city that you stop, you had the mayor who was very happy to see a European train arriving in their city. In the capitals, also ministers. And I think this is a good example. If we go even speedier on that, I think our estimation is that 50% of people will travel long distance by train. So we have a bright future. We need a lot of infrastructure, and then maybe the challenge is also the finance. But then maybe we discuss in another moment or in a second round.
Yeah. The finance is always a challenge. Panie ministrze, skoro już...
Mr. Minister, since we already started discussing the issue of decision makers and politicians, the issue of elections, etc., maybe outside of the Polish context, but in general, how should we split responsibility between member states who have certain decisions to make, and where and to what scope should decisions be taken in Brussels? That is a very good question. We have a certain standard which has been or which is being developed. It's based on EU directives. It shows us how we should be working together in the unified market, how we should develop interoperative specifications technologically, and how we should run the whole thing in order for the single market to start fully working and functioning. So we know the goal. It has been created, and I wouldn't be changing it for the time being. So we do not rush with more and more changes. In Poland, locally, we had certain delays in implementing directives, let me put it that way. The law that I mentioned, the amendment, which occurred at the pleasant moment for me that I was presenting in Parliament, was an element of implementation, the implementation of the EU law into the Polish law. Recast, the third and fourth railway package, we've done this all, market part, technical part, we got it. In my assessment, what we need is stability, a certain degree of stability, because we need to let the regulations start working. We have certain structural differences because of the different gauges. We have certain differences structurally because there's different voltage on the supply lines. We have a different level of implementation of RTMS in different countries. We started from a zero level. Some countries were beginning to introduce ETCS 20 years ago. That was the time when we were implementing the procedure of let's limit Polish railways. So there was no way we would be doing it. We should conduct things in such a way that we, in order to be able to catch up, I want to be understood well. I'm not ruling out innovation or interpreters lost signal. We're back. So that the technologies hear one another. Let's just put it that way. To say it colloquially. And now the question is that we have a certain standard of regulations and we have a certain policy that's connected to it. We have the European Railway Agency, we have the Commission, we have the cabinets, We have officials who are supposed to carry out a certain goal. So this bureaucracy right now is not thinking about further steps. They need to take further steps because bureaucracy has to justify its existence. But that's clear. But I would be taking very premeditated steps here, because if we take further steps without looking back at how the previous steps were implemented, not in specific countries but more broadly, then we would not be able to improve the single railway market. We will just be deepening the differences. It is a natural thing to occur. So, in order to equalize the potentials, there should be financing following it, tailor-made to the needs of the particular infrastructure managers, or even groups of countries. We are conducting broad discussion on the Rail Baltica project, and this is such a project. It's not for a single country, it's for a Apologies, we lost signal. Very carefully, because sometimes among friends, as a proverb says, among friends, dogs eat a hare. Sorry about this. We had a bit of an interruption in translation, but I hope that your punchline was heard. So it's all good, and I hope it was understood. Another question is partially political, partially not political, to our foreign guests predominantly. In what way, in your opinion, should the entire railway sector be organized so that the infrastructure management are able to perform their roles as best as possible, to do their job? Alberto, as the first, please.
So let me say two reflections here. We don't have enough capacity today. So if we have some short-term measure that might be able to increase the capacity, something that need to be pursued. In this sense, I think digital tools are the important point. They are faster, and we are reflecting for digital capacity management, how to manage all the infrastructure together and to have digital tools in order to progress quicker. The second tool that we have to increase capacity, in my opinion, is the RTMS. So there is this deadline now, 2030 for core network, 2040 for the extended and the comprehensive network. This should bring also new capacity. At the same time, we should continue to build lines because we need also physical infrastructure. So do we need a European infrastructure manager, European one? I don't think so. I will say why very, very, very clearly. Also, today, Europe finance 8% of the rail investment. And we would like to succeed, we go to 25%, this will be really a major success if we get 25%. But let me say that we go to 10. And when you ask a member state to finance 90% and to give all its transport policy to the one who's paying 10%, I think it's difficult. So I think we need to find, unless we have a European Union that is able to finance all railways of Europe, and this will not happen very soon, I think we need to have a way to cooperate and to work together as we are developing today. So that's my opinion where we are in realistic terms, but definitely we need to push to increase and better do what we have today in short term, but not stopping building new lines, because afterwards, 20 years later, we see the effect, or 10 years later, we see we didn't build anything, we don't have anything. So we need to have also long-term looking in railways.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Very much. Alain Quinet, a question to you. I'm not only talking about the European level, but also national level. How to organize the entire national railway system so it works as best as possible?
Yeah, thank you for the question, because in France, over 15 years, we have experienced all possible types of organization. I started 15 years ago as an independent infrastructure manager. Then we were completely integrated within the SNCF group, la grande maison, we say in French, big house. And then now we are a subsidiary of a holding under the supervision of a regulatory body. So I could make a 2 hours conference on the pros and cons of each system, but I think the main thing maybe is that now we have found a stability. And we need stability. So we are not talking anymore about changing the system. We are happy with what exists, and we need stability. Now I think the key issue is that the market is more important than the organization. And I think the good news is that we are able to cooperate among us all over Europe, whatever the specific organizations in which we live. And I could give a lot of examples of cooperation among IAMs or among our organizations. Of course, we have bilateral discussions and cooperations with my two colleagues from the Czech Republic and PLK. We are carrying out together very big projects. With our Italian colleagues, we are digging a big tunnel under the Alps between Lyon and Turin. I heard of Rail Baltica, of the Czech high-speed connection with transport hub in Poland. So I think it's very important to show that we are cooperating on big projects, and we are also cooperating with RUs. When you look, for example, at this stage, another part of Europe, between Paris, Brussels, Amsterdam, it's a perfect success, which is a result of a very good cooperation between IAMs and RUs. And I think that what Alberto just said is that we need to try to diffuse this excellent example all over Europe. Maybe what I could just add is that, of course, now we know that we have a big challenge, which is to cooperate more precisely on the rules of the game. And just to give you an example, the European Commission has recently issued a proposal on the capacity management. We know that it's in our hands. It can end up with a very bureaucratic process, or it can end up with a very customer-oriented process. So it's in our hands.
Thank you very much. The same question, to samo pytanie, Ruta.
Okay, so the same question to you, Ruta.
Always discussing in the future what is the goal of the mission climate neutrality. Because last my job was in energy sector to start in renewable energy, and when we get the goal, I said, it's not goal, but it's a mission of each country, first of all. And I see that Europe want to be the first continental in the world in the neutral continental, and the first thing what we can touch, they start from ourselves And 𝐼𝐺 Infra have in the strategy to save about 50% emission reduction till 2030 and the last till 2050. And we have action plan how to do that. And also we are talking about Rail Baltic and policy to develop international terminals for freight is one of the topic thing. And now current situation is in Lithuania that we have 2 international intermodal terminals in Vilnius and Kaunas, and we are talking about Panevėžys and Klaipėda in the future, what to change. And this goal for us to take that last year we had about freight about 50,000 tows, and till 2030 we're seeking to reach till 700,000 tows. And of course, renewables is one of the topic to reach this goal or mission. We started from 2018 in 𝐼𝐺 Infra, and renewable energy is used in our electric trains. And also what its opportunity in the future is to we have electrification project in 15-20 gorges, and also Rail Baltica project. So renewable energy will grow very fast, and we needed a lot of sources. And also we are thinking how we diversificate renewable energy purchase. It's to buy from independent member companies, or to have PPA, or to have storage, and so on. And I think it will be important for every country going to electrification.
To są z pewnością szalenie ważne.
Well, these are very important things. And Jiří Svoboda, tell us something about the structure of your company. Which would be the best one? Or in other words, how can the railway sector operate best? Well, at present, all the railways try to give answer to it. In Czechia, we had very quick liberalization. In 2003, we were not really ready, and not many problems have been solved by now. Now, ideal structure, I don't know. We heard that the basis of infrastructure is the client, the customer. I liked it a lot. It should be client-oriented. However, as I look at it, someone should try to find an answer how to get to this place. We know that the structures may be different in different countries in Europe. So in my country, it's like that. In other countries, they have holdings or cross-financing. So each country tries to find their own way. However, the very basis is about funding. So the way of funding. So I believe that the funding system should be unified across the European Union. I believe so. So one manager, while the other thing is the user, and nothing in between. At present, in Czechia, we have 120 carriers with licenses. So you may try to understand what the result is. There are many gaps in our legislation. Some people have chancelleries, and they employ a lot of lawyers, and you cannot really fight against them. So what is the best model? The best model is the one which will be unified across the European Union. This is how I look at it. And in Poland, how it looks in Poland now and how it should look. Thank you for the question. As you've noticed, our guests operate in different way as managers. So I think this is the picture as we have it now. Full holding, limited holding, partly, infrastructure manager, which is reporting directly to the Transport Ministry. like in the Czech Republic. Polish Railways, as the state treasury company, reports to the Ministry of Infrastructure directly. Out of 8 managers, biggest managers in Europe, we have holding in 3 of them. Which model is the best one? Well, I believe that we don't have any ideal solution, that the most important thing is that this operates really well. So the infrastructure manager should operate well, because structure is of not that much importance. The manager, infrastructure manager, I know it's the case in our neighboring country, the manager is responsible for the entire infrastructure. The infrastructure, this is the railway, the land. We have land. Aerial network, telecommunication system, railway stations, obviously. I was invited to inauguration of this railway station in Prague, which was developed by the infrastructure manager. So these are the aspects I wanted to raise now. So I believe that the infrastructure manager will never decide how they will operate. The owners, it's the owners that should decide about it. So I think that the infrastructure manager should operate like we have it in Poland, like in the roads. We have the General Road Authority in Poland, and they have nothing to do with the carriers. The infrastructure manager and the carriers. So dual structure kind of, or 2 separate structures, and 1 coordinator, obviously. And the coordination role should rest with the Ministry of Infrastructure. Then everything will be in one hand. And once again, all the infrastructure so all of it, it should rest in one hand. Okay, we are getting to an end of this panel. We are running really late. Minister, just 2 words from you. Short summary. Thank you for this interesting discussion. There are different experience in different countries. Well, we may look wider with it, so not only via the Polish experience, but we may look at the experience of our neighbors. We are trying to search for our best way to manage railways in the best possible way, in a digitalized way, having in mind all the needs. Obviously, we have different conditions, and the organization may be different on different levels. It's the result of the policy. Well, the state rejected solutions. So we should encourage the cooperation with different tools. And we need to have a good cooperation, which should be and could be effective. Well, we know that there might be different types of voluntary motivation, but the discussion should really be organized in this direction, how the collective transport should be organized. Maybe we should now get to the stage of getting some conclusions and maybe revise some previous policies. And if the railway transport develops better and is stronger, then we can be only happy about it. I'm sure this is the right way. Thank you. So yeah, everybody will be happy if the railway develops well. Thank you very much. I want to thank the panelists. We have Andrzej Bittel, Ruta Jabłuskę, Neji Swoboda, Alan Kine, Alberto Mazzola, and Ireneusz Merchel. Thank you so much for being with us. Now ahead of us, so round of applause. So really soon, we will be having the second panel moderated by my colleague. But prior to that, we will have time to distribute the cake. So go ahead. And so thank you very much. Thank you for the surprise. The cake is at the back of the room. My colleagues are distributing the cake. Well, we had new people coming. Minister Andrzej Bittel celebrated 7 years of in his post. And some will say that you are suffering with me. Everybody will be right. Well, the cake is a cake, but the dynamics of the conference is that we need to say, please be back. So, please be back.
Welcome to the next debate on railways. I'm pleased to welcome all of you and especially our guest. My name is 𝐤𝐵𝐺 𝐳𝐷𝐻𝐵, nazywam się 𝐤𝐵𝐵 𝐳𝐷𝐻𝐵. Witam Państwa na kolejnej.
And I want to welcome you to the next part of our meeting, the next debate, and now it will be the second panel, which is the transport potential of the railway corridors in the northeastern Europe.
Debate, our guest. Zapraszam panią Elżbietę Łukaniuk, członek gabinetu.
Elżbieta Łukaniuk, Transport Commissioner. Anna Elizabeth Jense, Coordinator of Coordination of the Corridor Transport, Baltic Adriatic, and Łukasz Malinowski, CEO of Port in Gdańsk. We have also Marcin Rzeszewicz, Director of the Department of the International Cooperation, Ministry of Infrastructure, place for you here. And the fifth person in the debate is Arnold Bresz, CEO Polish Railway System for Investment. What can we say in the beginning? There have been many doubts, but I believe that the previous part of the meeting had took everything clear. Well, the recent years changed a lot. and the logistics changed, and not only railway transport, I'm talking about the European transport and the world global transport, so that all the logistic networks, nodes, hubs have changed dramatically. There have been a lot of changes. We know all of it. It had impact on prices, delays in the supply chain. We know the situation. One thing is for sure.
The situation we're in, when we have war in the East, we do not know how long, of course, this situation is going to continue. Of course, we are optimistic, but life is life. And the aggressor does not seem to intend to let go. So at a certain point in time, we had to improvise a little bit. We had to go to provisional activities, but now we need to start thinking about the future prospects. There's nothing says that is going to change, things are going to change as we here in Europe, in the EU, or in Poland have thought it would change. How to be flexible and how to work to have a brilliant effect in a few years' time when the war ends. Let's remember that before that there was a coronavirus epidemic which did not help world logistics. So great changes. We in Poland also try to look forward into the future. Even before that, you could see the role of the Polish ports and in various elements of the logistical chain, mainly financing it from connecting Europe. There was 400 million euros that Polish railway lines received in order to improve accessibility to our most important seaports. Quite certainly, these projects help Polish logistics, but let's not hide the fact that what's important today for Poland is becoming increasingly important for Europe as a whole, also for the old Europe, if we may call it that way. During today's panel, we will try to discuss things that are with us now, what will or might happen in the future, and what's happening well and what will come in the future. We have new water, new microphones, the panelists are in, and the discussion is going to last about an hour. I'll start with a question to Director 𝐤𝐳𝐲𝐬𝐿 of the Ministry of Infrastructure, who's sitting next to me. We know that the Polish state lobbied towards the formation of a new TNT corridor, Baltic Sea, Black Sea, Aegean Sea. How were the discussions conducted at the European level? What is the role of this new transport corridor? And how much does this task connect with other activities related to the development of this transport route, the 3 Cs or V4? Thank you very much for this question. Definitely these were lengthy talks. You needed perseverance to carry them out. So I'd like to get back to a certain calendar of events, starting where the lobbying started for this very necessary corridor, how much work was needed, and how we were convincing our international partners, yourselves, but also international institutions. We started in 2006 in Łańcut, the first meeting chaired by President Lech Kaczyński, President of the Polish Republic, and this meeting initiated further activities which were aimed at establishing the corridor that would lead along the outer border of the EU and the outer border of Poland, a corridor which did not exist before at all. So there was a transport gap, communication gap. After 2006, there were a number of conferences, meetings, and events, as a result of which the group of states that supported this project to create this new route, the Via Carpathia, it started with the road, of course, Via Carpathia. The number of countries that supported it was growing systematically. The coalition of states supporting it was becoming broader, and the recognizability of the project grew. Initially, it wasn't easy. Yes, initially it was difficult. Many countries were asking, why do we need it? What kind of... Yeah, there are other routes which are good enough. Yeah, we have other routes that go east-west. East-west are very well developed. So the question was, why did we need that particular transport link? This systematic work resulted in European decision makers noticing this route. So a note here that the previous commissioner, Violeta Bulc, Commissioner for Transport, during a meeting with Minister Adamczyk after the agenda was systematically implemented, at some point asked Minister Adamczyk, we haven't talked about Via Carpathia yet, and then the minister was very happy to introduce the project in the conversation. That was proof that, yeah, the work at grassroots brought fruit. Yeah, more and more people are convinced. Correct. And Via Carpathia was always mentioned because that's where it all started, with a road, a motorway. But 2 years ago, the idea occurred for Rail Carpathia, which is a rail-oriented project that would go along the, as it were, existing road link. The name was coined during the Three Seas meeting and the meeting of Three Seas presidents in Sofia. And that was also a way of looking prospectively into the future, also working within the transport policy of the EU. Was it easier? Yes, but we already had some successes to look back to. And 2021, of course, and the proposal of the European Commission to revise the resolution about TNT. And this, for us, was a great success because our activities, also initiated by Poland, brought fruit. A new transport corridor was created that you mentioned, Baltic Sea, Black Sea, Aegean Sea. Of course, going initially from Poland southwards, along the north-south axis all the way to Greece. But at this stage, we did not sit back and look how well we've done. We decided that this corridor needed to be extended. We're specifically thinking of going from Rzeszów towards Lublin and further towards, on the other hand, further towards Baltic states. And here's a great success of Poland and our ministry is that we extended the corridor by adding the northern section. So we now have really a continuous link connecting Finland in a way through Estonia, through other Baltic states, through Poland, through Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, all the way to Greece and Cyprus. So it's a very lengthy transport link. This is the Via Carpathia project, but we're also talking about Rail Carpathia, and already it is included on the map. And the border crossing will be in Muszyna. That is very important because we know that rail is not only faster, but it's also more environmentally friendly, that the EU is supporting greatly. There are some statements about the European Commission, which took up the initiative to create new routes, the so-called solidarity routes. In May, it's been a year since they were first established. So my next question is to Ms. Elżbieta Łukaniuk. Now, how does the European Commission evaluate the functioning of the solidarity routes so far? And what are the further plans for this initiative?
Actually, important to answer from the beginning. So, our proposal to establish solidarity lanes came as a reply to the blockade of the Black Sea ports. And you know that Ukraine actually exported 90% of grains, extremely important for the world food security, through these ports. And then I'm happy to answer the question about the summary of the existence of the solidarity lanes. Because between May 2022 and July 2023, we count this as the year because the beginning, you know, it was quite difficult to get all the countries to work together and actually have good volumes there. But to sum up, I can tell you that Ukraine exported nearly 88 million tons of goods through solidarity lanes and then imported 31 million tons. But also what is important is the value, and value is 99 billion euros of all these goods. And actually, it's not only contributing to Ukraine, but also to the European Union, because if we look overall to this amount, we can see that exports from Ukraine is 35 billion euros, but also imports towards Ukraine, this is 64 billion euros. Here, what I can see, it's clearly now the pressure on the solidarity lanes is growing, because you all are aware that the Black Sea Grain Initiative was suspended, and then now all the pressure is coming towards the solidarity lanes. And when talking about this success of the solidarity lanes, I have to say also that it wouldn't be possible without member states, also Poland, and also operators, infrastructure managers. This is a lot of efforts, a lot of cooperation, a lot of coordination among all the actors, and of course, equally, Ukraine and Moldova are engaged and involved, and this is quite a huge task that we are having. And of course, on the European Union side, we are trying to support the capacity building within the solidarity lanes, and we had the call for projects that will. We selected 9 projects. The value is 250 million euros for this project at the border crossings, and this also should increase interoperability and capacity of the border crossings and of the solidarity lanes. And just the last word to finish. This is how we see the solidarity lanes. We see them as sort of connection that will stay for future, because I think we all realize that Ukraine, Moldova, they were very connected to Russia, and also they completely shift their economic focus, and this means also the complete shift of the transport focus, and now with all the plans of the with the candidate status of these countries to the European Union, also we can count on their closer connection to the European Union. So for us, the solidarity lanes, this is just the beginning, the connections that will be strengthened and improved in future.
How much, if I may say, are you flexible about funding? Is the Commission ready to start new resources for the so-called frontline states?
Maybe I will start also, by explaining that from the financial situation, war happened after also another crisis that we had. And within the European Union, we used quite a lot our flexibilities for the financing. And it is clear for us that we would like to have more money. And for transport projects, I'm coming from the transport sector. I'm coming from the commissioners, Vale and cabinet responsible for transport. We are fighting for money, and we are trying to find the money, but it's not easy. And of course, now we have the midterm MFF review. Our proposal was to have quite a significant amount of money for military mobility. Unfortunately, it was not proposed, but from the transport sector, we actually lobbied for this change. So let's see how it goes with the member states and with the European Parliament. But of course, we have to clearly look also into future how the next MFF is constructed. And of course, I think that we should lobby for a significant amount of money to support investment and the green transition, because this is the challenge also within the whole transport sector.
No tak, wszyscy można powiedzieć.
Right, everybody is thinking about money. Small wonder, the situation is dynamic, and we said earlier. The question is to Anne-Elisabeth Jensen, Madam Coordinator. What do the coordinators of the TNT corridor put the emphasis in the development? What's most important for the development of this network from the point of view of the coordinators?
Well, we are sort of put into the world to secure that these promises that member states have been made to develop corridors with certain standards will actually be there in 2030, 2040, and 2050. So we let people come together, discuss how are things moving, and are they moving in the right direction? And if not, is it the financing? Is it technical problems? What can we do to help secure that we actually reach our goals in 2030 and 2040 and 2050? And this is very important for the greening of Europe. This is important for efficiency, and it's long-term investments. So you do not change it overnight again and again. And as it has also been stated here, that more than 90% of the costs are paid by member states. So you need to seduce them and ask them to do their job very well for the common good. And this is why the coordinator is there, really. But I can say that we've got the same concerns as 𝐤𝐳𝐲𝐬𝐿 has mentioned on the financing, that actually we are quite concerned with the development of finance for the TEN-T, where we can see that there isn't in the present MFF enough to secure that you will actually meet the goals in 2030. And it is a bad thing to promise the world that you'll deliver on something when you actually know it's not going to happen. And I must say, already today, we are seeing very good projects being put forward by different actors along the corridors, where they do not get the funding because the money is not there. And of course, you can put together a project once and you didn't get it and you try to improve on it. You can do it twice. But at the end of the day, it is very detriment to the development of the corridors that people don't get money on the good projects. So we are more than the Commission who ask for further funding, and actually all actors in this should be aware of this problem.
A jakie pani dostrzega trudności?
What kind of difficulties do you see now? Where do you believe is the biggest problem now?
Well, I think funding is the biggest problem right now, because I do see member states being dedicated to fulfilling their promises on the corridors. Of course, the ability might be different from country to country, and you also see some delays in certain things, like on rail. Speed can be a problem, train length. ERTMS is really something that is a problem everywhere, where we might have to look into what can we do to actually push forward, because as has been mentioned, these standards, which are not sometimes a boring concept to discuss, but oh, they are important. Without them, it's not going to happen. So I think it's important that we stick to our guns, but also it's extremely important that we got the financing for it.
Najbardziej lubimy problemy.
Yes, of course, we like most the problems which are so easy to solve. That's right. But now something about the infrastructure. We should not hide that good infrastructure is of key importance for the modal shift. So my question to Arnold Bresch, well, PLK, as the national manager, is responsible for the implementation of TENT in Poland. Tell me, how much advanced are you in the process? What kind of projects will be of key importance in the new corridor, the Baltic Sea and the Aegean Sea? Well, investment process is a lengthy process starting from documentation to opening, and sometimes it takes a lot of years. And the processes that we should follow, they are planned by 2030 and 2050. For the base network, we have almost 5,000 kilometers of the lines. I will give you more specific data in a moment. We'll tell you where we are in these parameters, which are so important for us to say that the base network is adopted and compatible. These are no measures which you can do under one contract. Now they are across Poland. In many cases, very complicated projects from many sectors, and the final result will be met once we have delivered the final part, which is installation of the ETCS system. This is the last stage of the project, but it can be done first after we've delivered the first stage, the traffic control. So this is the final element, which is advanced only in 20%. We have signed contracts with contractors, and they installed the system now, but we have spots where first, after all the basic works have been done in the steering control, and after the upper layer is put, it can be done. Complicated works, and a lot is about documentation and software. I told you about the worst part, but I will be now telling you about positive parts, where the delivery is at a very good stage. We have 96% of the base network which is electrified, so we are really getting close to the target. Now X is almost 20% of it. The speed is on 60% of the network required, 100 kilometers per hour. And on top of that, we have something else which is absolutely prerequisite for us to manage traffic effectively. It's adopting a length of rails to put traffic. It's something 470 meters. The lines, well, all the time we want to expand these spots. We want to add new ones because otherwise we won't be able to put together goods and passenger traffic. We have comprehensive network. This is yet another 3,000 kilometers to be delivered. There we have more time. And just like we heard here, and we informed that we are ready for the projects to get on work. We have all the documentation ready, but we need to get back to this financial aspect. We're talking about funding. And in the case of very complicated projects, as we are doing, please remember, all the time we maintain the traffic. The corridor which we develop is not something which is where nothing's happening there. But, well, we know that the role of the railway network is so important. We understood, especially after the war broke, and logistics for military and also for transport of the goods to the ports. And you had to shift really quickly. You had to be really flexible in this type of situation, right? Yeah, investment project, this is something where you have to be flexible all the time. There are no simple solutions. And the last 7 years, well, they taught us that the situation may change from month to month. First, we had to cope with the pandemic situation, not only we in Poland, but all the sector. The construction works were not stopped, the train did not stop, and we had huge responsibility, but we really delivered. We do hope that the projects we have will be done. We are happy for new corridors to be established, just like we heard. We've been looking at these new tasks because it gives us the new perspective for development of the network, and we perceive ourselves as an important player with this location in Europe. Well, you have mentioned the ports, so maybe it's high time to ask Mr. Malinowski. Port in Gdańsk develops very dynamically each year. You strike yet another record. To what extent? To what extent the development of the railway logistics is important? This is the first question. And also, we see new transport corridors like Baltic Sea, Black Sea, and Aegean Sea, which will be translated into development of the port, right? Or maybe it will be too much of a problem because your capacities may be limited. We know that. How do you look at it? Well, I will begin with cooperation and development and these new corridors. We need to look back when we started to cooperate with our southern ports, and we made agreements with Rijeka, with Baku, Constanța, and Ukraine port authorities. And we had working teams. They discussed about the future of the corridors, and we have noticed the same problems everywhere. Development of the railway network, of the trans-European network, which could put together, link together all our European ports. We've noticed increase road transport. And I believe that once the railroad develops, when we choose more environmentally friendly solutions, I believe we'll have cheaper and better transport of goods. It's exactly because paradoxically we have extended the roads. They were meant to be solution for all the problems, but now we have a lot of roads. Yes, we but it's not a solution, really. Railway is better, cheaper, quicker, right? At least theoretically. Yes, exactly. Nevertheless, if we combine road transport with rail transport by intermodal terminals, I believe it will support the development of our national and international logistics. At present, we have 43 intermodal terminals in Poland, including 53% of the reloading capacity. These are sea terminals, and 40+%, these are land terminals. If we use the reserve, then it may contribute to develop the ports. Of course, it has to go hand in hand with the new investment projects in the ports, which they are really combined vessels. So we try to correlate the investment projects and the changes about the Baltic, Black, and Aegean Sea. How is it going to look? What is your simulation on it? We see huge opportunity combining transport routes between Turkey and Scandinavia, and an agreement, the letter of intent with Saloniki, where we have identical view at Via Carpatia development. We would want the Polish port, starting from Gdańsk, would be in line with the route of Via Carpatia because it would shorten the transport route, it would reduce the costs, and will contribute to a good exchange. And the war in Ukraine, did it change situation from your perspective? Is it easier now to discuss certain routes and significance of the port or not? Oh yes, it allowed us to change the perception. We were used to traditional transport corridors. The war in Ukraine forced us to look for alternative routes and to say to the decision makers from the European Commission that the routes have to be established and they have to be maintained because they are the real alternative for the security of Europe. Okay, how much goods do you transport by rail compared to road transport? I want to understand the share. 70% still, this is the road transport, and 30% only rail transport, but we hope that in the next years it will change into 50 to 50%. Exactly, so we may ask you about the transport market.
In recent years, in this market, we've seen systematic increase in the total cargo throughput, especially intermodal. Recently, we've seen a slight slowdown, but we believe this is temporary, and it'll pick up in the coming years. Moving to intermodal transport is a way to reinforce all modes of transport, and that TNT corridors are supposed to stimulate intermodal transport throughout Europe. Mr. Director, how do you evaluate the utilization of those intermodal hubs in the transport industry, and what was it like with the green light in this area? Yes, indeed, 2022 was not really well, actually, let's say it was full of challenges. We are ending the pandemic. There was war in Ukraine, but despite those difficulties, the negative impact was not so big. So that's a positive. In 2022, we achieved a record level of 62.5 billion ton kilometers. This is the record throughput ratio. So the results were still good. But as for activities, I will follow the voice that spoke about financing. It is essential to secure funding for further structural investment projects, because these investment projects would significantly increase the share of intermodal transport. Let's also remember that there was significant inflation throughout Europe, so anything we did so far, or we planned for, is now enough for what, 2/3? Well, we need to continue the investment projects that we started, understood broadly, not just big projects such as corridors, such as a 3C corridor or Rail Baltica or Rail to Sea, which connects Odessa to Gdańsk. These projects need to be continued, of course, but also we need to continue the smaller projects, like the last mile in rail, the port connectivity projects, and also intra-port infrastructure, which is developing dynamically, and there are considerable needs for it. We also have to remember that the infrastructure at the moment is not only for civilian applications, but increasingly we have to think about military use of the infrastructure. We're talking here about military mobility. Therefore, the Ministry of Infrastructure also believes, and to a certain extent is also disappointed by the proposal of the Commission about the revision of the financial framework. We're hoping there will be more money for transport. Yes, we'll ask you for a response soon. Unfortunately, it did not happen, but the negotiation process is underway. We see support because we'll come to an agreement today. Yes, both Madam Coordinator and you also showed understanding that there is a need for for finding the resources as invest. As a ministry, we organized at the beginning of September an international conference in Kraków. There were 8 ministers of transport who signed a declaration where we emphasized the need to increase funding from the EU level through Connecting Europe towards civilian/military projects. These are obviously investment projects. Also, we need to support carriers in replacing their rolling stock, purchasing new rolling stock, acquiring also EU support for instance, public support. I'm happy that you said that because it's money, 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 but there's often paperwork, which is an obstacle. It is true. Well, there are very many activities that have been undertaken. There are others that need to be undertaken. And we still, however, remain optimistic about the future because many of the projects will be completed sooner or later. Rail Baltica is going to provide a tremendous growth stimulus. Also, the 3C corridor, 3Cs corridor. I'm optimistic. Okay, I'd like to ask you, because you were called to the blackboard, as it were, in a nice way, though. But as I said, if there are difficulties, we can resolve them all today.
As I said, from the transport sector, we always want to get more money for transport investment. But then, as in Poland, as Ministry of Infrastructure knows that there is the Ministry of Finance, we also have such institutions within the European Commission that look very carefully how much money is there. And also there is the question how much money member states want to give to the common European budget. Then maybe I will...
Czyli jednak nie będzie to takie proste.
So it's not going to be as simple as everybody thought.
Maybe I will continue on the second line, what we can do from other angles. And this is quite important as well. So first of all, I think that it is important to say that within the TEN-T revision, we put a special focus also on rail, but not only like seeing rail separately. We see rail within the system. We see rail with terminals, with connections. We see this within the multimodal transport system, and of course with the key role of the rail connections in it. Then coming just to the freight transport, because that was a bit of the focus here, we have presented in July the greening freight package, and this package is also supporting rail. So there were some requests coming to capacity, growing capacity for rail. There is a proposal on rail capacity allocation and management, but also we took this issue all together. We have also elements that will support intermodal transport within this package, within weights and dimensions directive proposal. We have also a very important instrument that will help us to promote greener transport options. This is Counter Emission EU. So the common methodology to report about concrete transport options. So for example, if you travel from Warsaw to Wrocław, you can check and decide, also taking into account CO2 emissions, which option is better for you. And of course, we all know that passengers, and also for freight, it's the same. They want to become greener, but also the affordability is there, other elements as well. But for us, what we want to do is to have this, one common methodology for the CO2 emissions, that everyone can actually take also this criterion into account.
No, wiele jest pomysłów i działań, ale powiem tak.
There are many modes of transport. As we heard from President Malinowski. Still, railway is about 30%. Road, cars, 70%. What else could the EU Commission do in terms of initiatives to make it different? Persuade, punish, convince?
I think that my commissioner, she would agree with the line that Minister Bittel actually took. So she believes that every passenger and every business should have the possibility to choose the best solution for the passenger or for the business. And I think that, first, the option has to be attractive, but then the option, so rail can be this option. Of course, rail needs to become more punctual, become more reliable, and has also certain room for improvement on the customer approach. Probably that could be better. Rail can become more innovative, that's clear, and as mentioned earlier, digital solutions will help also to make rail more attractive and to have better offer. So for us, we see this more as the way, forward to allow rail to grow, but also in connection with other transport modes, but then that the offer that is there becomes attractive and attracts passengers and freight. We will not forbid something. This is not the line that we would like to proceed. At least that's the line of my commissioner.
Rozumiem, że to musi być w związku z tym proces.
Done immediately.
Well, as you can see, I think that if you look into the situation in Poland, this is the country from where I come. So I remember that when I was young, it was the question of traveling by train, but then there were a lot of delays, there were not so many connections, then it wasn't so clear whether you choose rail. And now, I visited my family this year and I traveled in Poland by train. I also accompanied some friends to the rail station, and I was actually impressed by the number of people. And I think that this is the record year, no, for the holiday season for Polish railways. So I think that it's a process, but if there is commitment, involvement and support, then it's possible. And at the European level, I think that our message was very clear with the Green Deal, with the support for the rail that is the most sustainable, with the European Year of Rail, with our strategy. On our side, we support rail, and this is very clear. And we support within a lot of instruments, and also for the financing. The financing, some part is there. So what is there within the current funds, it is to be used, and rail should seize this opportunity as well.
Ja też jak byłem młody, to
When I was young also, I was traveling Gdynia, Warsaw, 3 hours, 50 minutes using the train. Then it was 8 hours, then it was 12 hours, and now it's 2 hours, 50 minutes. It's the USA. It's supposed to be even faster than that. But let's forget the local things. Gdańsk versus Warsaw. Warsaw to Poznań still takes quite long from what I remember. But let's focus on the corridors, TNT. Madam Coordinator, the implementation of which of the parameters, in your opinion, could most contribute to the modal shift towards the rail? What makes or breaks the success between various modes of transport in an intermodal supply chain? What is the recipe for more ecological and more railway-oriented things?
Well, I think basically all the parameters that have been put forward are important. And the rail strategy, which is the strategy really in the TEN-T, because that's where the money goes very much, because you can get private financing and other financing for road, for instance, but the financing from the EU is very much into rail, also because it's green, but also because it's long-term, it's difficult, and specifically cross-border, it's been difficult because every country has the best rail system in the world, and they would never budge and do something like what the others would do. This has changed. We are approaching common standards. We have defined common standards, and all of them are important. And it's important that they are common, so that rail companies that would put freight through Europe know that they can actually, they know what they will be met with. The tracks can carry the burden, that in fact the platforms are long enough, and all these things should be there. And we are not at all there yet. And I think speed is also very important. I've seen that as an example where a country had to say, we will probably not be able to meet the speed conditions we are seeking. And it was not their own companies that were concerned, it was the neighbor countries' companies. So we are relying on each other, and my corridor has several landlocked countries that are very interested in what's going on in Adriatic ports and what's going on in Baltic Sea ports. So it is cross-border, and it is very important. See now that the rail freight corridor should be integrated with the TEN-T corridors, which is probably not an easy enterprise. I have started on my corridor with a very good discussions with the rail freight corridors, getting to know how they operate, and they should get to know how we operate. And they are operational. We work with hard infrastructure. They rely on what we do, and we can learn from what they do. But I think it's very important when we start doing things like that, that we actually respect what knowledge has already been gained in the rail freight corridors, and respect that the way they do things is very much about organization and people who has done a tremendous effort to carry out this, because we do not always have the common standards. And this is just to say that, of course, there are also things we can do on the operational side. Every summer we see journalists try to take a trip through Europe, and they talk about all the silly things they experience when they go on rail, and say, why isn't it possible to go on the internet and just book your ticket? Why isn't it easier to get to know how to do things? Why is Ryanair easier to fly with than to go by rail? So my job is on the hard infrastructure. That is really important, but it's also important that the operational side becomes better.
Jeszcze jedna rzecz, bo my patrzymy na pewne rzeczy.
Another thing, because we, the Poles, we look at things from the Polish perspective, but I'm wondering whether the so-called old Europe, wasn't it that you have kind of resigned, that you stopped from shifting into the railways? There was time, a long time in history, that you were focused on railways, but then it was like it went out of focus, that the old Europe is not really interested in the railway development. What do you say on it?
Well, people love their cars. So that's how it is. And probably rail has also, in old Europe, not always lived up to the idea that you should be interested in what is the need of the customers. You can say that on the passenger side. I have also experienced it on the freight side as a member of parliament, where I was approached by Deutsche Post, who would have us make a directive on the quality of rail transport. And I tried to say, can't you just speak with the Deutsche Bahn? Why should I be involved in this? But they sighed and said, it's not at all easy. So rail companies have not always responded the right way to customers' need. I think there's an understanding now that there is a huge political wish for something to happen. And in the EU, we have done a lot to try to make rail more efficient by promoting competition and in other ways try to see how could it actually be done better. But it should be cross-border because, I mean, I come from a very small country which would never, from Denmark, which would never have huge efforts in rail because it's too small. We are a bunch of small countries, and if we really should reap the benefits of rail, it should be cross-border. So we need the common standards.
To teraz takie pytanie do pana.
Okay, so now my question to Mr. Malinowski. What, to you who look at it not from the railway perspective, what can have significant impact on higher share of railway transport? Is it important to you who will be taking containers from you? Well, to us, railway is the most environmentally friendly solution and most economic solution, the best economic solution. And it does not result in congestion in the cities. So when we look at it, well, the solution, it seems to me that trans-European designing of all the network, the standard that Anna-Elisabeth was talking about, this is the solution we would want to have. This is the path we should follow. So we should look at it at a comprehensive way. And we should programming intermodal terminals, which will take transport from our road. Well, such an terminal should be in 𝐤𝐳𝐲𝐬𝐤𝐿. We use the ring road here in the Tri-City, but now people could take a breath because these huge tracks will disappear maybe from our city and from the by road, ring road. Yeah, theoretically. What further modernization work for the railroad infrastructure, which will increase the capacity, are planned for PLK S.A.? What are the most important tasks for you, for your company? And something about the timeline. I will answer the question, but I will want to refer to the previous speakers. Well, access to the ports. Practically, each investment project, a small one or a big one, which we do, it is in the context of the access to the ports. In the south of Poland, we try to eliminate bottlenecks so that the cargo trains will get to the ports. Now we have the biggest port station in Poland, which has been rebuilt just to ease the access. We have increased capacities on the railway stations. Please. So you are in contact, yes? Absolutely. We had a joint project. 2 port stations in Gdańsk have been rebuilt. Now we are at Szczecin, Świnoujście. They are also at the final stage of the reconstruction. And it is all funded from CEF, Combining Europe, so linking Europe. So this is what we do. We want to improve the infrastructure, and we get to the parameters of the base network. We are really close there. And something about our plans for the future that you asked. Well, as you have heard, we have adopted the National Railway Program. We have extended the one which was valid by the 2023. We have now funding for the next portion of the projects, which are in the pipeline now. We announced public tenders. We will be signing contracts, and step by step, we will improve the infrastructure. In the context of this situation, of this discussion on this new corridor, before. We have signed contract on works on 𝐤𝐵𝐤𝐵𝐞. We are getting close to the border with Slovakia, and there we want to build a piece of the new line. We have the documentation. It's our flagship product, I believe, and this is what we will want to inform people about. To that extent, the effects will be really fantastic. This line has very low parameters now, and the piece that we will build will be based on the new tunnel, so it won't be any issue for the passengers. I believe that the line in Warsaw is yet another project which will be in the pipeline soon. It's important because it will improve the accessibility to railway in a huge conurbation, Warsaw. Well, railway in Poland, it's time of renaissance, I think. We know that the Metropolitan Railway, this is, I don't know how to call it. This is the marketing product, I can call it like that. Well, between the cities, yeah, this is what we tend to talk about, but yeah, whenever I speak publicly, I underline that as the manager, Polish airlines, railways, we won't succeed just by ourselves. We need to cooperate. We need to cooperate with the carriers. We need to provide conditions for the railway to develop. Whenever we talk about cargo transport, we need to remember that we manage the infrastructure which gets to the siding, to the reloading spots, and there will be someone who will be responsible for the quality of the work there. And well, quite often our partners also have their bottlenecks, but the cooperation, we used to solve different types of we try to find solutions to different kind of problems with many other companies, but we won't be having effect if not for our partners. A lot is happening, I see, but there is still a lot to be done by PLK. I have to ask you about low speed for the cargo transport and maybe smaller cities. Because this is the backlog. Yeah, but they are not on our side. In most cases, this speed, this is not which comes from low quality of the infrastructure. Most often, the problem is with the carriers. I don't want to blame others, but you mean the trains that cannot go further, or they don't have, they do not have sufficient team in the locomotive, or they have to wait for new people coming in. So all of it makes that the system is not effective. And we need to, all of us, we need to improve the situation, and we will increase the speed, surely. We have also identified many spots, many places, which are bottlenecks. These are places where we have ineffective system, places where we need to, where we have passing loops, and places where maintenance was failing and the infrastructure got degraded, and we imposed speed limitation. We have identified all these spots, and these are minor tasks which we will be able to improve with not too much of a burden. But again, we need funding to do that. Money, money, and yet again money. This is what my wife repeats to me. I'm looking at my watch. It's not that much time left. So at the end of the session, I would like all of you to give me a very short summary. The context of our discussion was kind of optimistic, right? We are going further. We are looking into the bright future. We have new plans, new ideas. We are suffering from lack of money, but we will manage it. So now each one of you, please, give me one thing, something that you have in the back of your mind, of your head, about risks looming out there, something that you are afraid of, a catastrophe that you are a bit afraid of, which is about the development of the railway. What wouldn't you want to happen? What could complicate your life and all these ambitious plans that are ahead of you, and which we, all of us, want to come true because life will be better to all of us? What are we afraid of, Director?
Most certainly, what is very important is for infrastructure to create continuity so that it doesn't stop at national borders. This is the fear that we have, that the infrastructure which we build in Poland will not be continued beyond our borders. Of course, these risks are mitigated. Of course, the TEN-T policy and the obligations within this policy are there. We work with our partners. We continue dialogue. We exchange information and work schedules. Of course, there is a risk. There's also the element of the unknown, but we take actions to mitigate. Yes, for the infrastructure to create a certain mosaic of national sections, but also a comprehensive network of corridors, which will create continued route effective that will go also through Polish ports north-south.
Thank you for this question, which is quite interesting, actually. I would say that from our perspective, what is the risk is the slow uptake of new technologies, of modernization. We had the example with ERTMS, and it takes a long time to have this implemented throughout Europe. And then also we see that passengers and customers, they have a lot of needs that they would like to have satisfied on the side of the service, and all the innovative solutions and digital technologies can help in this. But then, we really need that the transformation comes and the modernization comes quickly.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much.
Well, I can subscribe to that. I'm glad I'm not the coordinator for the ERTMS, because it's really difficult. There are many different features on this that makes it difficult, and it's very, very important that we have this carried out. So, but basically, I am optimistic. And I'm optimistic because I really think that member states subscribe to this strategy. You've had in some places some quarrel concerning big projects, not in Poland, and not on my corridor. People are very happy about things, but you've seen Lyon-Turin, you've seen the Brenner Tunnel, you've seen other places where it becomes the political argument that you don't want this. Some places you see environmental considerations being used, not just for the environmental, but also to try to stop development as such. And you need to be flexible there and see to that you actually live up to the environmental goals, and that you keep the backing of the general public for this strategy. Otherwise, it's not going to happen, because in essence, it's built down from below. It's built up by member states saying we would like to be part of this, and this is what we will do, which I think is a beautiful thing. It's a thing people very often don't understand about the European Union, that it's not somebody in Brussels who say you're going to do this. It's actually people coming together and deciding something which would be very good. But basically, I am an optimist, because I do see a lot of enthusiasm out there. But then there's the finance ministers. So I think that's really the problem for now. And really, it's such a small pot of money if you take it in the total of the European Union budget. It's really not much. I used to be a member of the European Parliament. For many years, I was on the budget committee, and I sat there screaming, money for transport. I really wish I was there now.
Dziękuję bardzo, panowie.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Same about the finance. I will say that they have a negative effect on the market. I mean, the way we now run our projects, because we do not have a steady stream. Yes, we have the perspectives. Yes, the term runs out, and the manufacturers and contractors cannot provide continuous capacity all the time. We have periods of very high demand, and they cannot cope with them. When the end of the EU term comes, we have a lot of things to do, and then we have to do that while still going on with the transport on the rails. So the rails hold the trains, but also hold the repairs. So trains, repercussions are negative. Trains are late, so the automatic connection is, oh, they're working, they're doing repair, so the trains will be late. Without going into greater detail, the negative result is from lack of long-term predictable contracting. So we compete for production potential, and we compete for capacity on those investment projects, and we'll see, perhaps, how the ending of the war in Ukraine will affect our construction sites, because we've observed during crisis staff meetings that we had how the construction sites reacted to the outbreak of war. And we hope that soon our manufacturers will be delivering materials to contracts beyond our eastern border. We'll see if we'll be able to keep doing what we are supposed to do. Mr. President, the last intervention. I can say what I'm not afraid of. I'm not afraid of working together with Polish railways. Yeah, of course. With access roads to seaports. We've done that. We know how the network managers do it. It all works out. We can find agreement and do it together. I'd like to, however, highlight some risks that we've neglected. They're related to critical infrastructure and its security. The entire rail network and access links to the seaports can be treated as highly sensitive critical infrastructure which we must protect. And this is the risk for all our activities related to either hybrid war threats or other broadly understood geopolitical threats. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I asked about the risks at the end on purpose, not to end on a low note, but to wish you that all the bad things that you're thinking about, that it may never come true, and that everything goes on as well as until now. Because there's a saying, there's actually a curse, may you live in interesting times. We obviously live in very interesting times right now, but nevertheless, as you can see, hear, and feel, and know from your own experience, we are optimistically marching forward and hope we will be able to continue. And difficulties we shall overcome. Thank you very much to my guests. Let's have a round of applause. Ms. Elżbieta Łukaniuk, Ms. Anna Elizabeth Jensen, and gentlemen Marcin Rzeszewicz, Łukasz Malinowski, and Arnold Bresz. Once again, a round of applause. Thank you very much. Conducting the meeting was Sławomir Sierzeniewski. Also applause, please. I can see that there are some tow bags. Oh, me too. Thank you very much. Over to you, Maciek. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for participating in this conference, especially to those who stayed with us until the end of the second panel. We'd like to invite you to the stand of PKP downstairs at 5 p.m. We're going to stand a cocktail party, and you're all invited. Thank you very much. See you there.